Normally the rain runs off pretty well off this tarp, so I've got it sitting on the mast, but we had so much rain came down in such a short period of time that my system failed me a bit. So you can see in here it's built up. So I put my bathers on because there's a good amount of water in there. A little while back I was sailing up the Great Sandy Strait and I arrived at my anchorage after a long hard day and threw out the anchor and went down below and fell asleep for a couple of hours. I had anchored in an area which there was more tide, there was more rise and fall in the tide than I'd expected, and the result was that the boat settled down into the mud, but the problem being that I hadn't lifted the centreboard and I hadn't lifted the rudder. So the rudder blade got driven into the mud and was at a very precarious angle, and I thought it had been seriously damaged. Fortunately, I built it really strong when I repaired it, and it actually straightened out. But I want to delve in and just check and make sure that there's no damage being done that needs to be repaired before I head out on my next adventure. So first of all, a little bit about the way it works. The rudder box itself is fabricated using sheets of aluminium, and then at some point it's been reinforced with these stainless steel pieces. Now, last time I had it apart, I did some repairs, some pretty quick, you might say dodgy repairs really, because there'd been quite a bit of corrosion where you have this electrolysis caused by the two different metals. It's not a good idea to combine stainless and aluminium alloy in the same environment and then soak it in salt water, which acts like a nice electrolyte, and so these areas here were quite eaten away. However, rather than replace the whole panel, I ground it out and just filled it with epoxy, and that's failed. However, it makes no difference whatsoever to the strength of it, because the strength is gained now through these stainless steel reinforcements. So it works quite well. And you can see here, that's the way it pivots. So we've got an uphaul here which is attached to some bungees, and that holds the rudder up. You've also got an uphaul, this one here, so that when you want to pull the rudder up, usually it just pops up anyway. The rudder blade itself is constructed out of cedar, and it's painted with unknown quantities of paint. In recent times I've put 2-pack polyurethane on there. So I'll pull it apart and I'll just redo some of the repairs and see how it goes. But what I'm concerned about is the precarious angle that the rudder was at. There might just be something in here hidden behind this plate. There may have been some damage done to where the bush goes through the cedar. So let's have a look. They've got to be a little bit careful here, because the cedar that's been used in this blade, it's nice and light, but it's also quite soft, so I don't want to dent that. I think what we're going to do is get this out first. I think I can see a bit of a sign there of the stress already with a bit of a bend in that bolt. You can see there's a bit of a bend on that. Okay. All will be revealed. Now you can see here, as I suspected, there's been quite a bit of damage done there, but very repairable. It's a good thing about timber bits and pieces. So it's a bit slogged out there. What I'm going to need to do is to repair that hole. Maybe bore it out, put a solid piece in there, and then refit these bushes. But yeah, you can see also there's been a fair bit of stress here. What I'm really pleased about is that it didn't snap off about here, because it did come under rather a lot of load. So it's a bigger scale project than I'd hoped for. Always the case when you dig. Sometimes you're better off not digging, I think, but then again, that's better to discover that now than when I'm halfway up Great Sandy Strait in the bay to bay race. So it's going to be with the fiberglass. See how that's delaminated. Now I don't think all this was caused by the accident. In fact, I'm sure it wasn't. And you can see the moisture started to get in there. Timber's starting to darken. So this is very timely to strip all this off and start again. I don't think that fiberglass runs all the way down. I think it's just around this area here. So there's that side. Oh dear, the problem's getting deeper, eh? The further we dig, the more we discover. Not too much rot in there, I don't think. But yeah, feels quite damp there, so it's good to get all that off. It's the problem when you start fiberglassing wooden things. If the moisture can get in there, it will, and because it can't escape easily, and so that's when the wooden bits rot. But this is quite a nice bit of cedar, and I can see, although there's a bit of darkening around this area here, it's nice and light down this way, so there's no damage down there. So we'll make some repairs. Looks like that's a hardwood block there. It's going to take quite a bit longer than I'd hoped. As you can see, no adhesion there whatsoever, and lots of moisture getting in. I'm just going to put a decent scribe mark across here to mark the centre, something which is deep enough that I won't sand it out. Well, this is where it starts to get messy and noisy, not the least to say prickly. Taking this back to the radius because I'm going to fiberglass it. I've got myself a really hard piece of tropical hardwood. I think they called it Remu or something like that. You wouldn't know what it is, but just something which is really heavy and really dense. and I'm going to cut a hole and run it right through to make a core to replace all this soft rotted wood around here. And the fact that it's very dense and the fact that it is end grain then will mean that when you put it back together it's compressed in this direction. So the bolt goes through with a nut either side and it's compressed, and the hardwood just won't compress at all. Whereas the softwood has, and that's one of the things that would have ruptured the fiberglass barrier there. Now you can see here where I've taken out a whole big section of rotted wood, and still haven't quite decided what to do with that yet. But that's what happens. What I found in there was a couple of mild steel screws that have been used by someone at one stage. There's many layers of repairs here. So I'm stripping right back and redoing, but worst thing you can ever do is use a mild steel fastening through the wood, and as soon as that breaks down it allows the water in, and away it goes. That's pretty close. I might get that plugged with the hardwood, and then a couple of layers of fiberglass cloth over it. That'll be a pretty good result. It's a pretty good fit there. Put a bit of epoxy around that, and that will do the job beautifully. So I'm just going to create a bit of a dam wall. Stop the resin from running out this side. Not worry about the strength of the resin, it's really just purely gap filling. Because again it's going to be glassed over. I don't want it running out the other side. So, ready to go. Put that in there. I'm just going to fill that with a big block of resin. Alright, so I've got some good old-fashioned general purpose polyester resin and some MEKP hardener to be mixed between 1 and 3% depending on how quickly you'd like that to go off. I am going to use a bit of heavy cloth in here just to pack it out a little bit. Give it something to bite onto. So I'll just pour the resin over that, and then that'll give it a bit of strength. There you go, just 150. See that can started to rust a bit. So I'll put about double the amount in there, so 1.5. There's 2.5. Right, here we go. That repair will probably need a top up when I'm putting the layers of cloth over that. Let's put a bit in the bottom. And the theory is that that's going to squeeze up around there. There you go. Well and truly. So I've plugged that rotten piece there, cut out the rotten piece and plugged it with that big fat old piece of hardwood dowel. I'll put a bit of heavier cloth over the centre here, and then we want to thoroughly wet that. Definitely don't want any voids in that. Be a little bit careful you don't make it too fat, otherwise it's not going to fit back in the housing. There's one thing about the flow coat is it does sand off really well, so get a couple of layers on here. And I would have put some fairing on there. I put some micro balloons in there in that last coat, but because I was having trouble with it going off, and I thought, well, it's all hidden up in the rudder box itself, so it's quite a challenge getting this lined up because you've got a tapered rudder in both directions. It really is quite challenging. It's 15. 13.5. I've resorted to chiseling this out because I don't have a drill press, unfortunately, so it's a little bit agricultural. However, the point is that this is going to be filled with epoxy, so it doesn't have to be all that pretty. Not sure if they've compromised this formula over the years. I get a feeling it's a little bit different to what it was. Placing that. Looks promising. I'm going to put this bolt through because it's the easiest way. I like the way that's lining up. Have a think about a ship on the sea and consider this bit of 2,000-year-old wisdom. They're very large and strong winds push them with great power. But we fix a piece of wood at the back of the ship, and with this small piece of wood the master can cause the ship to go anywhere that he wants it to go. In the same way, our tongue is a very small part of our body, but it speaks as if it were very great. So the tongue's like a small spark that can start a big fire, that can burn a whole forest. But it can also start a fire that can ignite someone's life in a powerful way. Hi, I'm Christopher. In my day job, I swap hats from sailing moonlight to business pilot. It's the same in marketing. I can have one picture and some words and it can tick along on a video with maybe 200 or 300 or even 1,000 people look at it, and then all of a sudden I'll get one that'll give me maybe 3,000 views in one day, like I did recently. The difference? The right picture and the right words. The reason why I can keep making these videos is because of Business Pilot. So if you've got a business and you'd like a website or a short introductory video that puts the right words and the right pictures in front of the right person at just the right time, give me a buzz.